Coming up, it's not Christmas, but I've got a gift for you. A special chase on the CaterParrott Railnet, featuring a presidential locomotive and a whole lot of history. All that and more is next. You know, one thing that may be surprising to many of you is just how many small railroads there are in the U.S. These are known as short lines and regional railroads. Unlike Class 1 railroads that have huge networks running through many states, these smaller operations typically operate over relatively short distances, typically on track once used by the larger rail companies. Railroads like these are often popular among rail fans because of the second-hand equipment they use. Actually, some engines have gone through multiple owners and may even wear the paint scheme of a fallen flag that'll never be seen again. Short lines and regional railroads can be designated as Class 2 or Class 3, and according to the Association of American Railroads, there are approximately 615 of them in the U.S., and CaterParrott Railnet is one of them. On this cold day in January of 2024, we're on the company's Madison, Georgia division. Madison is around 60 miles east of Atlanta. This is CaterParrott's largest customer, a Georgia Pacific plant that makes plywood. CaterParrott and CSX are both connected to the plant. The railroads typically switch boxcars and wood chip hoppers here. And those wood chips can get pretty heavy. With their switching complete, it's time to pull the train out of the plant, up a steep hill, and toward downtown Madison. This is a 3% grade, and you can see the engineer, who's a friend of mine, is giving these two Jeeps all they've got. And now we get a good look at the power on today's train. Two EMD GP or general purpose locomotives, and these things are reliable workhorses. Number 7003 is a rebuilt GP40-2 that was originally manufactured in 1966 for the Denver and Rio Grande Western. And behind it, number 7001 is a GP40. It was built in 1970 for Western Pacific. The CaterParrott usually operates on weekdays. I'll bet the folks around Madison were not expecting to hear the horn on this Saturday. The train is now approaching downtown Madison. Here, two railroads run right next to each other. On one side, the Georgia Railroad, which is now part of CSX. Here's a picture taken in the Madison area from 1967. In this 6-engine lash-up, high-hood Jeeps, and two EMD F units. The line goes from Atlanta to Augusta. In this depot, the first brick station in Georgia, still stands next to the tracks. I'm honestly surprised the Georgia Road isn't operated by a smaller company at this point. It doesn't see a whole lot of traffic. Meanwhile, the other line here, the one we've been following, was once owned by the Central of Georgia, and later Southern Railway, and then Norfolk Southern. From here in Madison, it goes southwest to Matcham, Georgia, where it meets the other part of CaterParrott's Madison division, which goes northwest from Matcham to Newborn. The railroad interchanges with Norfolk Southern in Matcham. Okay, so here's another shot from the Madison area in 1967. It shows a Central of Georgia Alco RS3 leading an EMD F7B unit. These days, the CaterParrott division office, along with a small yard, is here in Madison. Today, a blue CaterParrott caboose is sitting nearby. And this is actually intended to be used like a conventional caboose where a crew member can keep an eye on the end of a long train and monitor the air pressure. And the generator here on top provides electricity. As you might already know, the end-of-train device pretty much made the caboose extinct on big railroads. They can do things like monitor air pressure or detect a train separation, and all the information is sent back to the head end with radio signals. Just beyond this wood chip hopper, you can see the former Central of Georgia depot. It was actually moved 60 feet away from its original location and is now being preserved. This place has many old buildings. In fact, a lot of Madison's antebellum architecture survives, as much of the town wasn't burned by Sherman at the end of the Civil War. The Morgan County Courthouse is also a distinctive piece of architecture, but it isn't quite Civil War era. It was actually built in 1905. So that's a brief history lesson. Let's get back to the train. Now here's something you don't see too often: LED ditch lights on a locomotive. They almost look green on camera. Oh, and speaking of colors, the red, white, and blue was proudly flying on the lead engine. Now, the line gets a little remote as it winds its way south, but there are several crossings along the way where you can set up and wait. I love how these old whistle posts are still in place. We're now around 7 miles south of downtown Madison, and the train is crossing the 4-mile branch stream. This was as far as I'd chased the train today, but this isn't the first time I've shown you clips from the CaterParrott. One way the railroad makes money is by storing locomotives and rail cars. Here's a big collection of engines and storage back in January of 2022. This is part of CaterParrott's Thomaston, Georgia division. Thomaston is around 75 miles south of Atlanta, and this is also ex-Central Georgia territory. The CaterParrott also has a Savannah division which goes from Ardmore to Sylvania, Georgia. Meanwhile, its other division in South Georgia, which goes from Valdosta north to Willacoochee, would probably be a good stop for folks who want to ride the rails. This was once part of the Georgia and Florida Railroad. In addition to freight, this line also features an excursion train called the Azalea Sprinter. They've got this classic EMDE unit down there that's definitely worth seeing. Now, here's an interesting factoid about one of the locomotives we saw earlier. In 1992, when it was owned by the Wisconsin Central, number 7001 was one of the locomotives that pulled George H.W. Bush's campaign train. The train was called the Spirit of America and visited towns around the East Coast and Midwest. This plaque commemorates the occasion. Like I've said before, you never really know what kind of history you're going to find when you're trackside. By the way, if you were wondering, Cater and Parrot aren't places like you'd find in the names of other railroads. Those are actually the names of the two men who started the company in 2005. You know, it's pretty amazing that even in the 21st century, entrepreneurs think that railroads are still a viable way to make money and serve small communities. Anyway, that's it for now. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.